This is Chris Jansen. I'm here with the End Evil podcast. This podcast is for folks who are interested in matters of freedom, who are pursuing truth, and for those who have the imagination to see a world without evil. I'm trying to work on the project of ending evil in our world. Today, I have an awesome special guest with me here today, Owen Hunt, a gentleman I met in Autonomy, who is very um, well, you have an amazing amount of work on YouTube. I'm going to share that on the link. But how are you doing tonight, Owen?
Oh, Chris, I'm doing great. I really appreciate you taking the time. We connected, well, I would say a few weeks ago, and it's been great getting to know you and look forward to chatting a bit tonight.
I should have had a much better introduction for you there. I sort of
Oh no, dude.
came up short, but
I thought
this
it
is
was I thought it was great. No, I appreciate it. We don't want people's expectations to be too high, that's a problem.
well, you could surprise them now. Yeah,
Hmm.
your AKA is Bootsy Greenwood on YouTube. I was just peeking on there and saw you're starting a new program where what was it called? Get Coached. That was hilarious. You
Yeah.
guys should check out Get Coached. Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's the plan there?
Sure. So the hashtag Get Coached program is something that I've had a lot of fun making fun of, as well as taking incredibly seriously, because I really like to work with people one on one. I used to be a reality transurfing instructor until my certification got lost in the mail, and I've been doing kind of my own thing ever since. Um, and it's really like an integration of several things, and it's not just going to be a one-on-one thing. I really like Autonomy for the fact that they do like the group sort of aspect, and that's something that I want to incorporate. Of course, it'll be much smaller, and I'll also offer as an incentive to anybody who might be potentially interested in working with me, if they do want to work with me and they do decide to go through Autonomy, if they haven't done that before, then I'll refund them all their money back if they go into Autonomy after they work with me. But what I'm specifically focused on is finding people's innate skills, abilities, and talents, and finding ways to showcase those through several different methods. Personality tests like the Myers-Briggs, astrology, basic astrology. I'm not an astrologer, as well as the Enneagram, which I think is the biggest key to understanding individuality, and motivations and desires. Like a lot of the personality tests tell you these personality traits about who you are, but mostly that just keeps you where you are. That's not what I'm interested in really fostering. And I really want to see people go from at least from codependence to independence, if not from independence to interdependence. And that's a big focus of mine. So really trying
Mm-hmm.
to find that, people talk a lot about the shadow, for instance, and it's almost always got this negative stigma. Oh, the shadow. And yeah, you repress a lot of stuff in the shadow, but there's also your good traits that you don't see. It's a blind spot. And so, there's a lot of things that we take for granted about ourselves and who we are. And we don't see those characteristics. We don't see those traits, and we don't know how to leverage those. And so I want to work with people specifically to help them get on the path to their goal and really find their most authentic expression and their purpose for their life.
Awesome. Well, I think that is, a huge part of what I always talk about in my show, End Evil. The whole the reason I have the tree of life is, understanding the interconnectedness with all of nature. And one thing I always talk about is how we've created prisons in our own mind. And so the pathway to making a better world is starts inside of ourselves and working on ourselves. And, that's been a big part of my last 10 years. I've come to all these realizations and I've gone through these major life changes and working on all these parts of myself. And it sounds like that's what you're going through, true. And then now trying to help other people. And so we're both kind of on the same page with that. And so you're right up my alley. So what we were chatting about a little bit before we started the show is, tell us a little bit about the before. Right now we're seeing the after, the vibrant excited Owen. What was the change you went through?
Man, I definitely, I would say, and this is probably about 8 years ago or so, when I first kind of started coming to some of these realizations and conclusions about the world, was completely destroyed. I mean, my reality was literally smashed by like a crowbar and then set on fire, and then a dog came by and lifted its leg on there just for, just to
Shits and
make sure.
giggles.
Yeah, right. Can I curse on your show? Is that okay?
Hell yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. so that's kind of like how I felt. I was literally living in my dad's basement and just consuming fear porn, at a constant rate. And some of it was needed, some of it was necessary. A lot of people do what they call spiritual bypassing, and they don't want to focus on these traumas, these hurts, as well as like the realization that the reality that we experience is not what we're told that it is. So once I realized that, and I think I was like I was like age 30 at this point. I was just living a life where I was just trying to have as much fun as I could, pretty happy-go-lucky. I loved music and was a raft guide and a ski instructor, and was like going around the country and just having fun, just bopping around. I didn't have like, I wasn't super motivated to do, quote unquote, something with my life, or really seek a higher purpose. But I mean, when I saw what was happening in the world, it pretty much destroyed me. I mean, I was completely depressed, and it made me a hermit for a while. And then I became incredibly socially awkward. So I wasn't able really to connect with people because I was in my head so hard. Like, I would even be around friends of mine who loved me dearly, and they would want me to come out to the bar or go to do like a social thing. And even if I went along, I would be such a stick in the mud. I wouldn't be fun for anybody, and I just felt alone, and nobody understood my perspective, or that's how I felt. And in my immediate reality, it was true. Nobody else in my friend group saw the world the way that I did once that happened. And I had to kind of pick myself up off the ground and reassemble myself. It took some time. It took a lot of struggle because I kind of went from one side to the other. I kind of swung the other way ultimately, eventually, and said, well, you know what? Fuck it. If I can't beat them, join them. I'm going to learn to do multi-level marketing or something like that. And so I went on that path to try to like make a bunch of money or something. And that wasn't who I was either. But and I'd go out and try to learn how to talk to people again, try to talk to girls or meet people with clout, and try to like basically be successful in the worldly way that I would consider successful to be. And that didn't fit either. So ultimately, I got into spirituality when that didn't work. And that's really kind of where I've been living the past probably 5 years. I really got into like Self-Reliance by Emerson was the first book that really kind of opened me up, as well as a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And then ultimately, the Reality Transurfing book by Vadim Zealand was one that I thought resolved a lot of the dualities that we see. Because, I mean, when I got into first the critical aspects of reality, I was like, oh, Ayn Rand. I read that book, the Atlas Shrugged. And I was like, man, it's right. Objectivism, right? Materialism. And then not too long later, I started having more emotional experiences. And I do have like a little bit of a background with the church. So I've seen some weird things happen in the church. And then I read the Kabbalion, and I was like, wow, this is a whole different perspective. And I thought, if you could resolve these two and put them together and synthesize them, then that would be pretty neat. You would have like a workable philosophy at that point. Because Ayn Rand, she's got some blind spots too,
Mm-hmm.
um, not the people hate her too, like, and that I don't care. The person is irrelevant, but that transurfing book was one that I thought did a really good job of presenting the material in a way that was both like had esoteric nuance as well as solid, scientific basis for the book. And so that kind of resolved those two worlds for me. And I took that book honestly as kind of like a Bible for like 3 years. I wound up creating the audio book for it, and went on to teach it on the YouTube channel. And that's a big reason why I have, people that subscribe to my channel, is because they really enjoyed the audio books. So that's kind of how I started with that, and also honestly was recording them just for my own sake, so that I could listen to them when I was working on the tree farm. So like self-reliance was like that first one, and some of the other ones didn't exist, or existed in forms that I thought could have been done better, right? Like some of them were like digitized or just not recorded well. And so as a person who had a little bit of an audio background doing music when I was younger in college, I was like, well, I'll just do it in a different way.
Yeah,
And
I can't wait to dig deeper into that. And that's what I was tripping over my tongue in the beginning trying to say, is that you have this extensive amount of work on YouTube. You have all these videos of books you've read, audio books that you were just describing, and then the reality transurfing,
mhm.
and then a whole series of other things you've done, interviews with other people, and just talks, motivational talks, and it's an incredible amount of work you've done there. So I hope you've got that all backed up somewhere else besides YouTube.
It's at least on library for
Oh, good,
now, and
good,
I'm in
good.
talks with
Oh, that's
Content
right.
Safe. I'm trying to
Awesome.
get on with them. Just kind
Yeah.
of trying to bring some other people along with me as well. But yeah, I would whip out my credit card for that service in a heartbeat, because I really think what they're doing, what they're providing, and their mission, and the quality of the individuals running that business are top notch. So
Yeah, that's content safe. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Autonomy is basically university run by Richard Grove, and it is a pretty incredible resource. Oh, so okay, I'll just go into the next thing I was going to talk to you about. Was um, I kind of went through a similar process. I grew up in like religion, Christianity, and then I had to really separate it from it. I was like, I don't like this Christianity stuff. There's a lot of things I don't like about it. And then years in my life later, now I'm coming back around to spirituality in a different way. But one of the things I used to always ask people when I was young is, I had like a survey. I would just ask everybody I'd met, what's the most important thing to you in life? And invariably, what people come back with is either having lots of money or being successful, which I never really thought were the greatest ideals. So I'd be curious, through all this process you've gone of learning, what do you think, Owen? What are the most important things in life? What is the most important thing?
wow, that's a heavy question, and I like it. I like it. I like a heavy question. To me, the most important thing, my purpose. I learned to exercise. I think it was from Steve Pavlina when I was getting into the self-help aspects of things, and he said to sit down and write down what you think your purpose might be for 30 minutes. Set a time or whatever, and then when you write down the thing that makes you cry, that's what your life's purpose is. I find that your life's purpose is different than the function that it sort of takes on form in the world, right? So like my purpose is to bring people joy. There are numerous ways for me to do that, but that's the most fulfilling thing that I personally can do. That's the most important thing that I can do to provide for the world. Now that might be cracking a joke in line at the grocery store. That might be writing a book that someone is inspired by. That might be me telling jokes on stage or doing improv and making a fool of myself in front of an entire room of strangers. It could take on so many different forms, but the purpose is that itself. So for me, fostering community, connection, and bringing joy to the world, that's the most important thing.
Excellent. It seems like a pretty good good thing to live by. How can you go wrong with that?
I've thought about it a lot. So
And I think that's the hard part, is actually taking that time to think about that. And that's not something that they train us in school. And that's not something that's advertised on TV. And some folks just don't get the message that maybe that's what we're actually here to do. And I'll scratch off the maybe there.
yeah, absolutely. It's tough because we're really hampered with the materials and resources that we have to access those things. It's like, man, imagine where people could be if they had the tools and opportunities from a young age to really develop and start out on that. And of course, like I said, those functions can change, but I think fundamentally, each one of us is an expression of God, like a one facet, one version, one part of what is it? Rumi says something like, "You are not a drop of water in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." But each one of those drops has its own shapes, like a snowflake or something like that. Um, or a nipple, right? No two nipples are the same. So it's pretty crazy. No two sunsets are the same. We'll never see the same cloud formations in the sky 2 days in a row or ever again for that matter, because it's infinite, truly. So there's some magic there, which is pretty amazing. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, but also,
Is that why men have nipples?
I don't know.
I've
I
always
don't know
been
why.
wondering that.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Well, how weird would it look if you didn't have nipples?
Just
You
a
could be
blank.
like this blank canvas right there. Like what happened? Did they swallow themselves or what?
It's great right now to have you here because, and the last time I talked to you too, because 2020 has been depressing for me. I'll be honest. I'm just getting to the point where I'm ready to start turning around and finding a way to laugh at things and finding a way to try to find the silver linings and things. So, I thought you'd be a great person to come on my show and lighten things up a little bit. And so, yeah, like how do you make people laugh? How does comedy work? Help us
Well,
out.
that's a good question. I'm not sure that I can answer that particular question, but I can give a little bit of perspective because it's not easy. It's 2020 has been hard on everybody, right? I lost a business that did, like almost 100,000 last year, this year, so, and I was gonna do 100,000 in that business. That was just one of the things that I was doing. Things were going, picking up. I had a good year last year, and I had, established some goals and done some really cool things, and we lost it. We lost like 40 grand in a month. Well, what's the silver lining there? I was able to lose 40 grand in a month. That's kind of cool. I think of one comedian. I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but they were like getting chewed out at like a studio executive's office. And then they're kind of smirking. And then the studio executive's like, "What? Do you think this is funny?" And he's like, "I'm just kind of stoked that I get to be here, man." Like, because he's like made it that far. And it is tough though I don't mean literally that's the silver lining. The silver lining for real of losing that business is that I shifted over into, meeting people in autonomy, and I started to do things, that were different. So for instance, I'll give you an example. I was doing an Airbnb business before, and that was the one that I'm referencing that we lost this year. And so it was doing very well. But the clientele that I was working with in the Airbnb business, there are people who came, they either came for a wedding or they came for a football game. That's all that happens really in the town that I live in. And they would come, they would pee the sheets, and they would leave. And we would wash the sheets and we put them back on the bed. So those are my client base, people who just peed on stuff. And I might as well have gotten a puppy, right? But like, I at this point now I'm speaking with you. I just got off the phone with Matt Raymer of Content Safe. I spoke to Richard Grove on the Zoom call last week. So I'm starting to my network's changing, and the squeeze and the clamp and all these things that are happening right now, they're catalysts. And necessity is truly the mother of invention. It's making us go to start new networks, to do new things, and that's something that's very important. And back to comedy, understanding that there are scripts written, there are ways that you're supposed to react, there are energetic information structures that are trying to provoke us. And I don't say that they're conscious, but we talked a little bit in pre-interview about the concept of pendulums, that energetic information structures exist, that energy clusters on the other side of this, finite physical reality. And I don't say that to say that they're egregores or demons necessarily, but influencing energies, right? Like the energy of a football team. And you made the point that, hey, school spirit, right? Or like team spirit. this sort of thing adds up and it's seductive, like whatever it is. Like we can't really, it's hard to define, but each one of those things has its own pre-written script, right? If we're at a football game and our team, scores a touchdown, well, we're excited. We get energy and we jump up and down. Well, if there's an interception or they lose the game, we're bummed out. And now our energy is sucked out of us in a negative way. So it's going out in two ways. It's going to that energy, though. We're contributing to that particular energy. Now, whenever we're provoked and we react in a way that is not within the script, we keep our energy at that point. So if that energy provokes us to cheer and we just don't care, like imagine a team coming out. I use this example a lot, but like imagine like you're at a football game, for instance. I don't know. I use football. I like football. People in your home team runs out, yay! Everybody's excited, and there's all this energy. And then the visiting team comes out, and everybody who's there, they boo that team. Boo. But those guys are like, yeah, we're getting booed. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, they're like eating up that energy, right? Well, if they ran out and you're just like dead silence, well, what energy do they get at that point? None. You're not giving them any. So one thing I think that's really important, especially for us who want to end evil, is to not fight against it. And that seems counterintuitive, but I had Mario West on my show a couple of weeks ago, and she is a feisty jalapeno. I love her. She's great. But she was fighting against sort of like satanic, cults and people who are evil, but she was actively fighting against them. And the truth of the matter is, whatever we fight against, it fights against us. And so if we can learn to disengage from that fight, it's not ignorance, it's not being ignorant to the thing. There's a nuance there. That's not what I mean. I don't mean just ignore it and it'll go away. That's not what I'm saying. That's not true. But if we can disengage from that emotional energy suck and then put our energy to something else, like building a new network that's worth building, instead of fighting against the old, or fighting against what we don't want, because we really actively get whatever it is that we don't want, right? And we also get a fight from anything that we pick a fight with. So the more we pick a fight with that thing, the more it fights right back against us. And so now we've found ourselves in this basically energetic trap. That's kind of how I like to look at them. They're energy traps. And so now we've engaged in it so much that it's actively taking our energy from us. Like, you see people who are just so obsessed with the news or the media, and they just become angry and these like,
right, get all caught up in it.
yeah, they're just like
You know what I'm thinking about while you're talking about is kids. Think about a little kid that's totally misbehaving. No parents giving them any direction, and they're just acting crazy. Like, you're not going to stop them completely by ignoring them, but that's part of the process. Is like someone's being irritating and frustrating a kid. You want to ignore that. You're not going to give them any attention, because if you let it work, then they're just going to do more of that. They're like, oh, I'm getting on this guy's nerves, great. And they're going to get more fired up. But if you can redirect the energy and take them somewhere with it, and that takes imagination, that takes that third option. Society's only going to give us these two boxes. You want the red one or the blue one,
right.
and they've already built these boxes, and you're just going to fall right into them. So what you're talking about is creating a new place for yourself to go that you've thought of with your own imagination, almost like that little kid that needs something to do with all that energy. So create a game for him, instead of feeding into that negative energy.
Exactly. And that's where the comedy comes in, because when you react in a way that's unexpected and you defeat that script, well, the energy is quashed and you're not getting you keep your energy, and you're not getting sucked down into that, that pendulum or that energy trap. And you've reacted in a way that is completely, out of character to whatever that thing is provoking you to do. So you keep your energy, you go on, and then that's kind of comedy. It's right. It's like doing the unexpected thing. Comedy. The secret to comedy, as Aristotle says, the secret to comedy is surprise. And so whatever that element is, that you can do, that's different means that you don't play into that predetermined script, and then now you write your own script. Now you have the power, and you step out of that sort of matrix, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it.
Oh, that's exciting. I feel like that's definitely what we need. This talking about things being scripted from my point of view. This whole ever since this whole COVID thing started, and even all the protest stuff, it just seems like there's a lot of script being played out. A lot of things that a lot of us who've done research already knew were coming. We just didn't know exactly how it was going to come. And now we see it playing out, and it's just so blatantly obvious that we ask each other, like, why are other people not seeing this? How do we wake people up to see what's going on? And it seems like sort of an impossible task to get other people, but we need everybody, because it's not a job. Ending this evil in the world's not a job that can be done just one person. We can set an example. But I think
Absolutely.
one thing is just reaching out and making friends. And so I think that was a big part of me getting part of Autonomy. And I was curious to see too, like, after what you were talking about, how do people, a lot of people are nervous or shy or by themselves. How do they go about making friends and creating community? Because I think that's a big part of the solution. What do you think?
That's definitely a big part of the solution. It's never been harder to do that too. I mean, here we are. We're asked to be inside. We're asked to keep distance from people, and I think that's intentional too. And I think that it's not only just people who
Can't see
have
my smile when I'm like
right,
this.
exactly, exactly. It's not just the people making those particular rules, but it's also the energy that comes from those rules too that continues to push that and that momentum. And so, as far as like reaching out to making friends, Freedom Cells is a good way to try to find people. The freedomcells.org that Derek Bros set up, and a lot of people have been talking about that. I've met a couple of friends locally off of that, which is kind of cool.
I made a new
So
friend that way also.
yeah, so that's definitely one way. You could try Tinder. I don't know how well you're going to do on Tinder, but it's worth a shot. But yeah, I would say shy people, and when you get in your head, that like I was, a few years ago, 8 7 8 years ago, it's really hard because you start to talk to yourself, and you really get more and more in your head, and try to get in your body. If you can get into your body more, even if that's just saying some stupid gibberish, which is one thing that I do sometimes to get out of my head, or ride your bike, or do something to get out of your head and in your body. And that's going to put you in a place where you're going to be less awkward if you do reach out to somebody, and you're probably going to be more likely to want to to avoid that imposter syndrome. I think we're all from school kind of pushed into, it's like, well, we all feel like we have to appeal to some authority or have some sort of permission in order to do anything. Well, disregard that. That's not true. If you reach out to somebody, and as cheesy as it is, if somebody reached out to me and said, hey, can we be friends? Actually, Jessa Reed did just that, who's like a very famous comedian. I was reading those audiobooks. She found one of my audiobooks. She sent me an Instagram message that said, hey, you've been reading me books. Can we be friends? Verbatim. Swear to God. I mean, I'm talking about a comedian who has millions of views on a Comedy Central special, who just sent me an Instagram message and said, hey, I didn't know who she was. I honestly, at the time, I was like, yeah, sure. Of course. And she was like, here's my special. So I looked up her This Is Not Happening, which is super interesting and very funny. It's I won't go into it because it's pretty
Maybe we can
outrageous.
find the link,
Yeah, yeah,
like
for
to
sure.
put it
It's
with the show.
if you Google meth pee, it'll come up. Uh,
Okay.
but I wound up connecting to her and meeting some people in her network, and went on her podcast a couple of times, which is awesome. And she's a very unique, interesting type of person. She's really super, out into the ether, woo woo, new age. But like we had some incredible conversations via podcast. But I mean, she literally just sent me a message that said, I've been listening to you've been reading to me, or something like that. killing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's like that was 2 lines, and I think you can probably come up with something a little bit more well thought out. No jab at her for that, because I was ecstatic once I saw her, Comedy Central link. I was like, because I mean, having a special on Comedy Central, that's a big deal for a comedian, especially an aspiring comedian, and somebody reaching out to me, because I know a few people who are pretty well known in the comedy community, but yeah, it never hurts to have more allies. And honestly, too, like people who are like serious about comedy, or sometimes, I don't know, it's weird.
But I
Sometimes.
guess it's exciting that you were creating something. You were making something that she found, and then she latched onto that. So that's one thing right there, right? Find something of value you can do that you can share with people. And sometimes I think of that like my younger self, when I made a lot of realizations between the age of like 35 or so. Like, I wish I could reach myself when I was 25 and catch myself up 10 years. I wouldn't have had to spend 10 years, going through the hamster wheel of trauma. I could have skipped right by some of that and got right to starting to understand freedom. So, I think finding a way to bring some value to other people's big. And then, like you're saying, just take some step of bravery. Find someone that's doing something you like and say, "Hey, I like what you're doing.
Yeah,
Want to be friends?
yeah,
Want to meet
exactly.
up sometime?"
Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to hurt a thing. And worst case scenario, they don't see the message or don't respond to it, and you've sent out a gesture, even if it's just emotional, just in a real way, to reach out to somebody. So there's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't even worry about it if you don't hear anything back or any of that. It's not a reflection on you as a person, even if that were to happen, for instance. But yeah, I mean, be bold. Fortune favors the bold. The universe favors people who are courageous. And courage doesn't mean that you don't have fear. Courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Right. Yeah, like some of the things I've done that have really helped me out in terms of meeting people, or like making a live Facebook, for instance. I didn't like Facebook. I didn't like the idea of doing a live Facebook. But by doing it, I made some new friends and I found some people that see things the way I see it. And that's made my life incredibly better. I'm not completely alone. So that's huge. So I guess going forward, we're in the middle of all this stuff again. We're getting new lockdowns. People are following all these rules, and it's a scary world out there. What do you see going forward? How do we handle this, and what do you think is going to happen?
Good questions. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm optimistic that we're here for a reason, for a purpose. Like I said, mine seems simplistic. But I mean, there's other functions within that. I think that we're here to build networks and build community and start to work outside the main system. So agorism is definitely a solution to problems, new ways to trade, new ways to communicate via the internet, or even bringing about old ways of communication, like mail, sending letters, thinking outside the
Mm,
box. um yeah, like Ted was talking about, like doing kind of like a chain letter type of thing, which I think is a great idea, because you can't open somebody's mail. You're not allowed to do that. So, we draft up like a page letter to say, hey, this is what's going on. Here's a couple places you could check out and learn more about what's going on in the world, and maybe get some resources if you're interested. Here you go. I mean, from looking at the physical world, there's a lot to be alert about. There's a lot to not be. I'm not enthusiastic about the political state of affairs in our country. It is not it is not the fate that I want to see. It's disappointing for sure. But that again is an opportunity to bring people together, to create new communities. Because like I was talking about before, it's like, when those energies, when we fight against them directly, whether whether we fight against them, or if we give them positive energy. We're just reinforcing those structures. So I think now's the time to really find ways to work outside of the established system. And that's going to be the new future for people like yourself and myself who value freedom. Are ways to do that. How do we and I also have a large passion for helping other people come across these messages. I don't really know what the best practices are necessarily there as far as doing that. Everybody's different. I would say, like, obviously you don't want to smash people over the head. You want to be compassionate and empathetic and try to use nonviolent communication, even though you're frustrated because you're like, hey, don't you see, this right here, and people just, they don't see it. So that's frustrating. But I do think, G. Edward Griffin was talking on the Union of the Unwanted a few weeks ago, and he was so optimistic at that mind. It blew my mind how optimistic he was. He was like, I didn't think I would be around to see this, but he's like, I'm glad I am. And it's making us, take specific actions. And I'm seeing people collaborate. I'm seeing people stepping up to, like I was talking about earlier, my Airbnb business, right? Where my customer base was people peeing on the sheets. Now my customer base is people that I'm connecting with, like yourself, people who have and share values. So how much more fulfilling is that? That's one thing that we can look at. In every in every situation, there's some sort of an opportunity, and nobody's getting out of here alive. So I have on my fridge a David Hale piece. Well, it's a photocopy of a David Hale piece, but it says, "You will die. Give thanks," and it's got a skull that he drew. I see that every day. I keep death in the forefront of my mind because it's, for twofold. One, to hopefully help me from not taking this life too seriously, but two, to keep me motivated and working on what I need to be working on. If that's something as trivial as making a comedy sketch about the 12 days of Cuomo, or if that's, writing a book that I'm hopeful that people will read and be able to apply and change the way that they interact with reality. Because ultimately what's happening is the media and thought itself is so influential that we're like little manifesting machines. That's just what we do. And I admittedly hate the word manifesting just because it's thrown around like
I'm with
Hotel
you on that. Yeah.
California by the Eagles. It's like, I've heard it enough.
Right.
But that's truly what we are, right? And so we are visualizing these things, we are conceptualizing these things, and then we're bringing them ultimately into reality, into the world, and we're helping that actively. The more we, entertain these ideas of dystopia, of human, I guess, enslavement. We are actively participating in it when we are railing against it. So our energy, I think, should be not, and again, not that we should ignore it, we should acknowledge it. But what does Terrence McKenna say? When you get the message, hang up the phone, right? It's like, I know what the plan is. I know what the deal is. I know what the score is here. I see the writing on the wall. What can I do to work on solutions? What can I do to work with other people, to build networks, whatever that might be, and try to have as much fun doing that as possible, because it is nice to stick it to the man.
It's like our opportunity to become heroes. I was talking to someone recently, a friend of mine, who was going through a tough time and feeling really stressed out and anxious and going through some depression. And I'm like, imagine a climber who's climbing a mountain, like on the most gnarly face, right? Just hanging on by their fingertips, and they make it to the top, right? Like, well, you're at that part right now in your life where you're hanging on, but that's really the most heroic place you can be. So give yourself a pat on the back. You're going through the hardest time and you're making it through. You're still alive. You still have a grip. You haven't fallen off the mountain yet. So take pride right now. This is your opportunity to be a hero and do something heroic with the time you have here, because the odds are against you. The odds are against us. So it's motivation, it's inspiration. If you look at it that way, if you find that silver lining.
Yeah, David beat Goliath, man. Should not have. He shouldn't have. There are anomalies like that. We look back, I'm a big fan of the underdog for sure.
And
Look,
doesn't, like, just like everything else, things have to, like, an alcoholic, they say you have to hit rock bottom. Maybe as a world, maybe as humanity, we're hitting rock bottom right now. It kind of feels like that in some ways to me. And maybe that's the opportunity to bounce back and go the other direction.
yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it as well. I think we're here to help those of us who do see what's going on. And I don't know. I mean, there's all this interesting conjecture in the spiritual world, right? Like, are we like Pleiadians or like some other species from our star seeds or like whatever? That stuff is conjecture, but it's interesting and funny. Also, like I like making fun of that because
Well,
it's easy
does
to
it
do.
does it really change? That's the thing I got into. Like, people were bringing up for a while the flat earth thing, and I'm like, okay, it's interesting, let's entertain it, let's talk about it. But really, does it change what I do on a day-to-day basis? No. you know but this
Exactly.
other stuff that's going on is affecting us on a day-to-day level. When your freedoms are being limited, or you're being told you can't leave your house, or you can't have a business, or you can't cross a state line, or you have to put something in your body that you don't want to, that's when things get real.
Mm-hmm.
And push is going to come to shove here. Things on the physical world are going to be real. And the truth is, we're not a solitary species. We're not just one. You can't just be one thing. We're all connected. We need each other. And that's what I keep coming back to. If shit really hits the fan and everything's going nuts, the best resource you have is your ability to communicate with your neighbors and work together with people and saying, "Hey, I can do this. What can you do?" Let's survive together. Because on my
Mm-hmm.
own, I'm pretty much shot.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, we owe it to posterity to really step up now and do the right thing. Like I said, there's a lot that it would be easy to try to want to ignore. But I don't know. Like you said, we have a chance to step up and be heroes in this moment. And what else are you going to do? Right. It's like I look back and see all the things that I probably should have done over the past few years where I wasn't being as strong or as vigilant as I could have been. And now's the opportunity for me to take those lessons and apply them, in real time. Posterity is important. The future is important. And regardless of whether we're aliens or whatever, right? Like it's conjecture. Again, it's funny to think about. It doesn't matter ultimately. Like the what matters is what we do
What do we
here.
do with our time, right?
Right.
We
Exactly.
still have some.
Hmm. Yeah.
How does this all play into the reality transurfing? Does that have some, I mean, you got all into studying that, and then all these weird changes happening in the world. Are there some parallels there?
Well, one thing that I think is really interesting about that book is like this is a dude who was like he was a physicist. I don't know if I guess if you have a job at all, it's for the USSR because it's the older guy. So he lived in Russia during the crash of the ruble. So for him to put this book out and to have optimism overall is pretty interesting to me because there are emotional transactions that are happening like the weather, as above, so below, right? In the esoteric. So these emotional transactions that are happening, whether a society is collapsing or not, are still real. Now he does in the book say that there are pendulum networks, right? Like so these clusters of energy, like I'm talking about, are think of them as swinging back and forth, but then there are other ones swinging like this, and they polarize people, right? Like they put people on one side or the other, thinking in that dualistic way, and charge them positively or negatively, and then but there are networks of them, so they're all sort of working in coordination. So he says ultimately in that book that these structures, what they want is permanence. They want to permanently put themselves into that place and have those adherents, the people who are stuck to those particular views or ideas, constantly giving them energy. And so basically he's describing the matrix energetically, right? So so he does talk about that in the book too, and say that the network that we're building, which has to do a lot with the technology, is, ultimately it's happening. What we do and how we go from there is totally up to us. But he does point that out, and the energies themselves are going to continue to swing and pick up momentum the more we feed them. So that's the real power, is these systems that have been set up. It's not really necessarily, in my opinion, the people who have set them up, but it's the systems themselves that have been set up that continue
Mm.
their momentum, that continue a sort of reign, and then them operating in conjunction with each other. That's the real sort of labyrinth or maze.
I often try to point out to people how something like a corporation, in a way, could be compared to the biblical idea of a demon.
Mm-hmm.
Here you have this entity that's been created, that it's no one person. It doesn't have a heart. It doesn't have a mind. It doesn't even have a body. And yet it has power. It has power over humans. It has power over individuals. I mean, you even think about something as silly as Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
It's this made up idea, but it has this reality in our world now. He has color, he has shape. Anybody can make this symbol, and people actually give up their choices and decisions to this fake god. You could almost think that's very similar to the idea of a demon. This thing that's been created that's not real. It's not human. So I think for us, the goal is to bring back humanity, to put our energy and time into the human touch, the human extra element, the imagination, all the stuff we've been talking about.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good illustration too of like that pendulum idea, like because like a culture of a corporation has a culture, and I think Pascal talks about the culture. The first four word letters are cult. And so,
Mm.
like, you've got this corporation. It's not, like you said, one individual. That's a perfect illustration. And you start to wear uniforms and represent this thing and the mission statement. What's even more dangerous, though, are these groups that don't even have a constitution or a set of working principles. That's why I think in the group dynamic, it's so important to write things down, like, because at that point, the thing just becomes more and more and more extreme until it just it's constantly rewarding the more radical, the more radical, the more radical. And we see that play out too.
Yeah, like social media, right? What do people click on? The most ugly, the most evil, the most bad things are going to get what's going to get people's attention.
Exactly.
So what we need to do is we need to be, like you said, the Kybalion's a good place to start. We need to find principles, things that are solid, things that are at the core of reality, and align ourselves with natural laws, with the natural law of, which is basically treat people the way you want to be treated, you know, and quit letting these demons run us.
Mm-hmm.
We create our own path for the future. So, the way I see it, I do think it's going to turn into the Matrix. The Matrix movie is really impressed me. And to me, that's a scarier than death, is seeing all these humans in pods, their life energy just getting sucked out like zombies. And that's kind of what we see happening here. So, we're trying to find a way to create a different path for some people to get out of that, and not be trapped. So I'm excited to see what you're doing. And I think people should, if you're someone that's struggling, Owen would be a great person to hit up and get some coaching. You can see how good he is at cheering people up.
I
um,
appreciate. Yeah, yeah. Santa Claus is real, man. I'm like the teenage version of him. You know what I mean? Like I cheer people up. That's what I do. It's one of the things for sure. I'm actually going to start making a couple of different video series right now. One is going to be called Rock Bottom Reality, because a lot of people are hurting right now, and what's more common than COVID? People hurting themselves and being destructive toward themselves, and I don't want to see people suffer. That's not going to help anybody. And I'm also going to do a reboot of the reality transurfing principles as well. on my channel, and you were talking about how much you hate Facebook. God, me too. But I'm also going to do a Facebook group to try to keep things positive for people to come in and see positive things. You know, you can share your puppy videos, you know, things that are positive within that group, not negative things, but positive specifically. And, you know, I'll share like my videos and stuff in there. Um, you know, I've got the coaching thing coming up, and that really is focusing on, you know, coming really discovering your most authentic self. But I want people to be able to to do the best that they can in this situation, because it is hellish. I mean, it really is. You know, like small businesses are being destroyed. People's livelihoods are just being thrown to the wayside. The middle class is basically, it's a war. And as soon as this happened, I was like, this is not a war of people versus people. This is a war of the establishment against us. You know.
Mm-hmm. What do you think when you tell all these people, your job is not essential and you're not allowed to come out of your house, and I don't want you getting close to anybody because you're a possible carrier of a sickness. If that's not going to make people depressed and get sick, I don't know what is.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Oh, you're not essential. Stay in your house by yourself. That's like the worst thing you could do for your immune system or for the future of humanity, you know? So it's good that we have a lot of positive things to talk about today.
No, I mean, ultimately, like I said, man, nobody's getting off this rock alive, you know, but don't yeet yourself off of it, you know, like just know that you're here for a reason, and you know what that is ultimately. Like that exercise of sitting down and writing for 30 minutes, I highly recommend it. You will find something that makes you cry on that list. Many thanks to Steve Pavlina on that one. Somebody pointed out to me that that's where I got it from, and I was like, thank you for reminding me, because I forgot about that guy. But it is true, you know, and you're here to do something. We're here for such a time as this time to step up and to do something. I don't know what that is for you. You know, I can talk and, you know, work with people and try to facilitate their experience. I'm not an authority on anything, and I don't claim to be, but I you know, I do like working with people and seeing their growth. I've had a lot of people that I've worked with have breakthroughs because we each have blind spots. You can't see everything about yourself, you know? So I
And
love
when
seeing.
people come together, that possibility opens for the spirit to come out, like we said, like team spirit, group spirit. That also happens when we put energy into each other and we listen to one another and bounce ideas off each other. And the other big thing you brought up is, I want to repeat it one more time before we close up here, is the physical body. That was one thing that really helped me out through. I've been through some really sad times recently, but I started routines in the morning. Originally, this was like a couple years ago. I started doing 7 push-ups in the morning because I'm a little skinny guy. 7 push-ups was really easy. For someone else, it might be just one or two, or maybe not even a push-up, some other exercise. And I just kept doing it every morning, every morning. And now I do a lot of push-ups in the morning, and I have other exercise I've added to that routine. And even on the worst days, if I'm feeling depressed, I can like flex my muscles and realize, like, yeah, but I'm not failing on that account. And when your physical body's in good shape, your mind works better. So that was a good point you brought up too.
Yeah. Routines, that's a big focus on the coaching thing. And a couple of things about that. Actually, today I woke up, you know, and I rode my bike and wrote, you know, did some free writing. I take the morning, I don't book anything until noon. So the morning is mine. I have at least 2 hours to me, and it's been hard for me to do that. And I will sometimes take a call or call someone, but I've been very deliberate about that. I'm doing the Wim Hof breathing method in the morning as well. I highly recommend Wim Hof. And there's one exercise that I've done and will continue to do, and this has helped me tremendously. Getting out of your head. I talked a little bit about doing silly shit, just what the fuck ever, like stupid, blah, 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 you know, like talking gibberish. But focus on your heart. And it sounds cheesy, but it's incredible. It's why I have this as my symbol right here, is because like Care Bear stare, right? If you can, that is your electrical chakra center. There is so much power and energy coursing through your heart. It's way more than your brain. It's way more than any other part of your body. If you can think about some one that you love or something that you love in the morning is when I usually try to do it when I'm laying in bed. You will start to feel love. And the more you focus on and amplify that feeling of love, the better you're going to feel. And the more you're going to blast that out. And then you're going to charge your energy up big time, you know? And sometimes I forget about it. And I'll forget about it for a few days, even a week. And I'll be like, why am I like all salty today? And I'll be like, well, you know what? But there's literally, and being grateful. It's counterintuitive, right? But like you can't develop abundance unless you're grateful, unless you're thankful. And there's people in my life that I have that are friends of mine, and make as many friends as you can. But like every morning, it might be somebody different. I might think about my friend Sean, or I might think about my friend Ben, or I might think about my girlfriend, or I might think about, my dad or my sister, whomever, or a puppy, whatever. It doesn't matter. It could be, our old cat. And I will just start to just focus on the energy that comes out of my heart whenever I start to think about that. And our attention is like an amplifier. So whatever you're focusing on, it grows and grows and grows. So once you get that going, if you just continue to focus on it, it's like radiating more and more and more and building and building and building. So, a lot of times I'm having a great day and then I walk in to run an errand and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot my mask, I put a fucking mask on to walk into the grocery store because I'll just be having a great day. Everything will seem fine.
Yeah.
Putting yourself at the cause at the beginning of the day too, like you're saying, like doing those push-ups instead of getting on social media or watching, your favorite person who's telling you, you know, not great news that you already know it's not great news, right? Like disengage from that. It's not a bad thing to disengage from. Those pendulums are seductive, and fear porn is one of them. And
Yep.
I've been on that hook, man. I've been swinging on that hook a bunch in the past, and especially when this whole thing came down, in like February, March. I was real bummed out. And so now I've had a few months to pick up some of the pieces and, again, reassemble myself. But if nothing else, just knowing that love is all there is. Ultimately, nothing is gonna conquer that. It's just impossible. So
I've been getting a lot of joy out of because I don't wear masks and I'll go in place and just smile at
yeah,
people.
dude, it's awesome.
And people, I'm getting better at it. Sometimes I've gotten mad and that doesn't work well. But when I go in with a big smile, today this lady, I was in a little taco place, and this lady, she had her mask on and she was carrying a whole load of tacos or whatever she bought there, and she was heading towards the door. And I jumped out and I said, "Ma'am, can I open the door for you?" I asked first while I was still 6 feet away. And she said, "Oh yeah, please." And I did, and she was so thankful. She said, "Thank you, sir. That's so nice of you." And I sat there holding the door for her, and I'm like, okay, she might be mad at me for not wearing a mask, but she was sure grateful that I opened the door for her.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of opportunities to turn shit around out here, and
absolutely. It's those little things, they do add up. And I imagine at least half the people that are wearing masks. Well, I don't know. I don't know about numbers, but a lot of the people who are wearing
I think
masks,
it's more than half that know better.
yeah, they're like, oh, they're
They're
envious of you.
doing it, but they don't really
They
believe in
don't
it.
really want to. Yeah, they don't see the purpose of it. They know it's stupid. They're just doing it because of all the social pressure, and that's why, I do it too, because my town's like super, super duper liberal, and even my friends would, oh, what's the matter with, it's like, dude, I just don't even want to hear it. I'll just put the stupid mask on. When it comes down to it, you're not putting anything in my body, but I'll wear a stupid mask. My girlfriend made me this cool like rattlesnake skin one that's made out of this like really nice silk, which was sweet because I was walking around looking like a serial killer for like, a week or two because I was on the
Cobra
films.
Commander, I like to call it.
Yeah, because I was on the film set and I really needed money, so they were like, you have to wear these masks, while we're on here. The next production you'll have to get a vaccine, and I'm like, well, I'm working now, but I guess I'm not going to be working when that happens because I'm not trying to take a jab here. Um, So anyway, it is a weird thing, and so when you're going around not wearing one, people, it's inspiring to people. I'll just say that.
I
I,
hope so.
I saw a hippie chick in in the Kroger one day not wearing a mask a few months ago, and I don't think she had shoes on either. But I was like, man,
Good.
you're crushing it, lady. I
Nice.
love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like cheering her on. It was fun.
Well, we should close it up. It's been a good hour here, but I think gratitude is the word I'd like to leave with. Life is gratitude. So being thankful is like the first big step. You got any other closing remarks, Owen? Or
This will end.
all things will pass.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, gratitude. We're yeah, and we all know the end of the story. So let's try to enjoy it as much as we can. Enjoy each other. Yeah. Anybody
And
out there wants
smile.
to reach out? Yeah, smile. Anybody out there wants to reach out, they can do so. Uh, I'm at Bootsy Greenwood on social media and YouTube page is that. I'm trying to get on some of these other alternative platforms and working on that. Uh, but I'm really trying to primarily focus on creating the content itself and put that stuff out on
Right
these
on.
other places.
Well, I'll share whatever links I can there, and when I share this video, and I really appreciate you spending this time with me, and I got a lot out of it. I had some good laughs, so I think we're doing something good. Thanks,
Thank you,
Owen.
Chris. Thank you.
Appreciate
I
it. We'll
appreciate it.
we'll be chatting again. We'll be in communication.
Awesome.
All right, man. Great.